Hey there, Internet friends. Trevor Starkey here with another episode of AC Saturday, and my journey through the Season 1 of My Hero Academia continues with episodes, I believe, 9 and 10. We have Just Do Your Best, Iida, and Encounter with the Unknown that we'll be going over today. Just Do Your Best, Iida. You have it kicking off with the press out there kind of asking about All Might, because All Might is the number one superhero. Him kind of taking a life as a teacher is big news. And so you have the press kind of hounding the students and trying to get, what's All Might like? Blah, 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 blah. We also get maybe our tease at, I think, what is essentially going to be the big bad for the rest of the season, in that we get a guy kind of standing out there menacingly looking at UA. You have the students picking the class representative, and we end up actually getting Deku, who wins because he voted for himself. Iida voted for him because of how he responded in Crisis. And then you also have Chaka, I always forget her name, little girl that makes things float. She voted for him too. So he ends up winning with 3 votes, while most everybody else just kind of voted for themselves. But Yaorozura, smart girl who was very strategically, tactically minded in kind of the review of everything, she ends up being selected as the deputy. We get to find out a little bit more about Iida himself here. This is kind of his showcase episode, I think, and we get to learn that he's basically a legacy and that he comes from a family of superheroes, and they all kind of have essentially costumes that match the one that he designed or had designed, his costume matches what their design looks like, and he's very much inspired and looks up to and is trying to be like his big brother Ingenium, something like that, who's basically well known, has a whole bunch of sidekicks in an office somewhere, and so like even that, like, oh, there's like a superhero has multiple sidekicks in an office somewhere is like nice little world building of like, oh, okay, so that's how they handle that kind of stuff. He's the big top guy, but then he's got a whole bunch of people that work for him and maybe help support him in that way. You have a kind of a break-in at the facility that it appears is just the press, but it looks like there's also probably some more malicious intent behind it, and the press just kind of gets used as a cover, and so all the students panic and try and escape, and they kind of basically like block the exits and in their rush to try and get out of there. And Iida tries to keep a calm, level head, gets Floaty Girl to touch him, and then he uses his jet legs to rush towards the front so he can kind of get everybody's attention and try and calm everybody down and say, hey, it's just the press, like, no need to panic. And in doing so, he kind of flips through because he's not really used to flying through the air, but he kind of shows what he can do. And ultimately that leads to Deku basically saying, hey, I think Iida should be class representative instead of me, and Iida graciously accepts. Elsewhere in here we have kind of the revelation that All Might, in bestowing his power into Deku, is becoming weaker as a result of it, and he can't stay kind of as strong as he was. Or he can stay, in All Might form for shorter and shorter periods of time, he's finding. And in doing that, he's, still being a hero on his way to work, and so he gets to work and he basically has to, like, hide away because he can't be All Might for class, and so he's having to maybe learn how to balance those kinds of things. And then lastly, the episode ends with the students basically being taken to another training location off-site, the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, that basically seems to be like a theme park, but for superhero training. It has like just a ton of different simulation zones. Like there's the fire zone and the shipwreck zone, and it's basically where the students are going to have a lesson in rescuing people and being trained to the importance of rescuing. They meet another one of the superheroes, Space Hero 13, and he is, or he or she, I'm not sure, but 13 basically is well known for their rescue abilities and how much they've saved people. And so the lesson they're about to have on rescuing everybody is interrupted by villains basically bombarding the spot. And so we kind of learn, the people who the menacing guy that we saw earlier in the episode has basically gathered a whole bunch of villains together and is invading the students' kind of training facility, and that's kind of how that episode goes. So it's a great showcase episode for Iida. He gets really a little bit of time to shine. We get to know a little bit more about him and that he's rich, so to speak. They kind of make a big deal of that, and that he's not trying to get by on his name. He's trying to be his own kind of hero, but he definitely is also trying to live up to and be worthy of his family name. So that's cool. It's a nice little addition to his character. And we get even the Iida and Ochaka, I think, and Deku kind of solidified in their little trio of people. And so it's a great little showcase for Iida. It's a nice little episode. And then we get into the next episode, Encounter with the Unknown, and that very much turns into what I think the rest of the season is going to be. We've still got, I think, 3 more episodes to go, and it very much looks like they're all kind of going to be centered around this new threat coming in and attacking, and they're trying. So all the villains that have shown up are basically there because they in the schedule, they thought All Might was going to be there. All Might, in his weakened state, sat out the field trip, so he didn't go. He's back in the lounge at UA, and the principal ends up kind of sitting down, talking to him and saying, hey, nope, you can't go because you're weak, and you need to figure out how to balance being a superhero and being a teacher. You need to put teaching first, is basically how the little principal bear mouse thing kind of stresses. Much to All Might's chagrin, I think. You get to have a really badass moment for Eraserhead. He really just starts taking out a whole bunch of the villains that are trying to come at the kids. Basically tries to get all the kids out of there. And then this guy who can basically teleport people and vaporize and whatnot, he teleports and scatters all the students around, kind of throws them into different areas. And as Deku kind of ascertains, the villains were put in different areas based on their abilities, but it looks like the villains don't know the students' quirks. Because otherwise they wouldn't have put Sue, who is the frog girl, in the water zone. They would have sent her off to the fire zone, as they kind of touch on. So there's the whole thing is introduced to the League of Villains, and these guys are really trying to eliminate All Might because he is the symbol of hope. And so it's very much if we can take out him, then the world will fall into despair, and it'll be Justice League, and the world will have lost their Superman and that kind of stuff. So in this episode, we very much for most of it follow Deku, who gets thrown into the shipwreck zone with Sue, the frog girl, and that's what her quirk is, and Mineta, I think is what his name is. Mineta? I don't know. Little guy with purple balls thing that he can, as we find out here, his quirk is that he can take them and stick them to things, and they basically glom onto. He doesn't stick to them, but they stick to everything else. But then he is freaked out about all this, and he's panicking, and he mentions that if he pulls out too many, they grow back, but if he pulls out too many, he'll start to bleed from his head. And in what ends up being Deku's plan, because they're on the ship surrounded by a whole bunch of water quirk people, Deku basically says, okay, we got to get them all together, and that's our best chance. We're super outnumbered, but we can be smart about this. They don't know what we have. They don't know what we can do, and so he ends up using his quirk to basically flick the water, create a big old suction of water that brings everybody in together, and then kind of it basically creates not a whirlpool because it's not spinning or anything, but it's basically a vacuum of water. And then Mineta uses his balls, throws them in the water, and basically gets all of the water bad guys stuck together, and then when the water kind of pulls back in on itself, it flings them all up in the air. And so we see basically they are a clump of bad guys all stuck together by Mineta's purple sticky balls, which is just super uncomfortable, especially as he seems to be kind of a little bit of a perv. He has a line in there that's like how he's afraid he's going to die, and he just wanted to touch what's her name's boobs, the girl who ended up being the deputy. So he's a little bit that's kind of seems to be his character. So that's interesting in this day and age, but I get that Japanese culture a little different. Anyway, the plan we see there kind of as it unfolds, Deku really kind of outsmarts and uses the tools that he's got and the people that are with him to overcome the odds in his group, and all he did was lose his middle finger and thumb in one of his hands in doing it. So he's still got a few other things that he can go all might crazy on, and he can certainly still reserve his big guns of when he busts up an arm or something, he can still do that later. And so with that's very much, this episode ends with like a whole bunch of other groups are still kind of figuring out their surroundings and how they can deal with all the villains around them. And so I'm very excited to see where they go from here. And like I said, I think in the last few episodes, I think this is probably the end game for the season. At least that's what it feels like right now. It feels like this is kind of the big third act of this season structure. You had the first act of kind of establishing Deku and getting him powered up. And you had the middle act, a few things kind of introducing the school, and now you have kind of the big bad rivals versus students. And it's very much again like Hogwarts, and this is like the Death Eaters are all coming in and the students kind of fighting back. So this is, I guess, like what would that be, Half-Blood Prince era of Hogwarts. So the kids haven't been working together super long, but they've been, they've formed a camaraderie, and in the group that we get here of Sue, Mineta, whatever, and Deku, they kind of trust his strategic mind because they've seen how he can figure things out in a pinch. So I'm very excited to see where this goes. Sucks that as I go into like end of the year, game of the year content, I probably won't be back to the show for a couple weeks. I might just sit down tomorrow and like finish out the series and like pre-record the next episode, just because I don't want to have to wait so long to watch it. But we will see. So yeah, those are my thoughts on these 2 episodes of My Hero Academia as we enter the final stretch of the first season. Again, really enjoying the show. Like, animation's just a ton of fun. They definitely have fun with like, this is definitely just not as nearly as serious as Death Note was. So it's been a great change of pace all around. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing where we go from here. Let me know what you thought about these episodes in the comments below. As always, I've been your host, Trevor Starkey from TrevorTrove.com. You can follow me at SnarkyStarkey on Twitter. And until next time, from here at the Trove, go beyond! I think that's the thing for this show, right? Plus Ultra!